Hello, Matthew. Can you hear
Hey.
me?
Yes. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I was
Oh,
just looking at the full moon because I thought it must be getting very close to full moon.
yes,
My
it is.
video isn't on, so I just got to tend to that. There we go. Okay, right.
Yeah, yeah. Do you notice things when the full moon comes?
Oh, well, it's like it's 5 o'clock, and so I had my alarm set for 4:30 because I usually wake up between 5 and 5:30, basically naturally, and so I was woken up at 4:30, but I was like in the middle of a dream, and
Yeah.
so yeah, so I was in sort of the dream state, and yeah, I went out and put the animals out because, you know, they have an outdoor area that they go into, and I could just really see the light because I'm quite sensitive to light, you know, as in
Yeah.
the qualities of light. And I always like the full moon. So, yeah. And I thought, all those weird dreams that I was having, is that something to do with the full moon? Yeah.
What's great is you're saying all the buzzwords that I'm thinking of. It's like we already had this conversation because right before this session, because obviously this is a topic I don't always talk about, but it's something that you kind of have to experience for yourself is you get into a dream state. And I went and took a nap, and then as I'm waking up, I use the snooze button for my conscious dreaming. So right when you begin to wake up, but you still want to go back to bed, that's when your brain waves are in the ideal state to venture off into other aspects of what you would think of as your reality.
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah.
So yeah, you see, and you said the light, and that's really where this all begins, is that people will say, well, I'm going to share with you an idea of how this works, and it's how reality functions. And to make it make sense, you have to understand light. Okay. Like, you know what a kaleidoscope is?
Hmm.
So you exist not just in one centralized location that you think of as Judy in the flesh. Here I am, this is my life. Here's my timeline. I was born here. I'm aged whatever now. That's your limited mortal concept of reality. Okay. But in truth, you are everything is light. And so as light passes through, it can radiate into what they call these altars. And that's your soul. And you can emanate as other, you see, what they would call incarnations in other dimensions.
Hmm. Hmm.
And as you begin to identify with that, sometimes through dreams, sometimes you will have experiences where you think it's a dream, but you'll come back and you'll have a physical scar or some sort of marking that will show up and show you that you are kind of in both locations at the same time. You
Hmm.
can start to have these anomalies begin to occur. And if you're sensitive to that idea and you're experiencing that, which obviously you are because you're talking about it, then there's a high probability that you're already doing these things and doing it consciously on some levels.
Hmm. Hmm.
You see?
Yeah, well, it's quite fascinating because I opened up an email from somebody who I'd been conversing with, and he had mentioned in a previous email that he had some various, you know, death experiences when he was much younger,
Yep.
and he had mentioned that he had met his future incarnations.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, you know, and I hadn't heard of that, haven't heard too many people about speaking about that, but I had, I wonder why my light is flickering in the background. It's not flickering here, but
I can,
when
yeah, I
I
can
look,
see it. Yeah.
yeah. So
You
that's
know, you can,
really,
when we talk, when we begin to talk some of these things, because I'm still in a really low brainwave, and so are you, because we were resting, you can
yeah.
experience weird fluctuations in reality. Okay. Telekinesis, things can happen, and you can blow out light bulbs. You can have things fall off the wall. You can do weird things can happen. And
yeah,
that's okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Don't have to control it.
No,
Yeah, but I was just curious about where that was coming from, basically. But yeah,
yeah,
it could be, yeah, yeah. So anyway, so it's interesting that you talk about it, because I had a quick look at his email, and he's talking about light bodies, light body. And
because
then,
the
you know,
light
we talk about,
fragments off in like
yeah,
a kaleidoscope through the holograms. Okay. Because the light comes through and shines out into the room of the hologram, which is what the world is. It's just an illusion.
well, and then as if to demonstrate, we've got, you know, I'm seeing light flicking, so it's all about light, isn't it?
It is. Let there be light.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and there was light. Okay. So your light
Mm,
body is your true body,
yeah, yeah.
spiritual reality, and that light is intelligence.
Mm-hmm,
It's divine mind. And
mm-hmm.
when the Vedics say that, infinite worlds appear and reappear in the vast expanse of consciousness, like motes of dust dancing in a beam of light, you
Mm-hmm.
see, every reality construct, even your reality, if I were sitting next to you in the same room, would be different than mine.
Yeah.
And that's only one aspect of potential infinite realities that we can experience.
Mm-hmm.
So, going into this, by the way, you wanted to delve into the super soldier program and talk about the ideas that come along with that. And
Yeah.
so just
Yeah.
for anybody who might be listening to this, because I'll share it and people
Mm-hmm.
they can play with the ideas themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is nothing that you shouldn't, you shouldn't say, oh, this is too out there for me. It's like, even if you read Mary Baker Eddy's books about people, when she would pray, the weather would change and things would become altered around her. So if you haven't experienced that yourself, then when you start getting into truth and you start recognizing that all is one and one is all, and you are the light, and that infinite worlds are a reality, and they're parallel worlds, they're not timeline oriented linear progressions, but they're all happening concurrently. You can have slippages in your matrix where you just slip in and out and things will be weird. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So when I look at my timeline, I was born 2 months early and the doctor said I wouldn't make it and my lungs weren't developed. So they took me away from my mom, put me in the machine so I could breathe. And I made it. And then at a couple years old, my biological father was driving at the time, head-on car collision at 50 plus miles an hour. My mom had me and she held me. She went through the windshields of the car and, had to reconstruct her face. My dad had to put a steel rod in his leg, and I had broken all these bones as a baby, and so obviously, do I remember that? Not consciously. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
on and on and on, I've had so many of these experiences. I don't want to go through every one of them, but what I want to tell you is that how come I can't remember that experience, but yet it happened? You see?
Mm.
And so what I want to question everybody is that, do you think that your memory of what you think is real is actually the only reality that you are participating and have participated with? You see? Because what I'm going to submit to you next is that you are living concurrently in other realities right at this moment, because the light fragments off. And just because you're predominantly focused right here doesn't mean that you have to stay rooted there. You can venture off and begin to assimilate and bring those others and those other experiences into this moment.
Mm.
I remember there was a guy that taught a course called quantum jumping or something, Bert or something. Well, that's based along the same lines, is that he could mentally step back and jump into another version of himself that, knew how to paint, knew how to do music, knew how to do all these things. And then he could demonstrate it and bring it back to this awareness right here. So what you have in essence is, if you're going to talk about this super soldier program, I have to share a couple more of the things that lined up for me to open up this awareness is that I have seen a shapeshifter with my own eyes in this dimension. Okay. And that's the story. I walked into a Walmart and I'm walking down the main section where the cash registers are, and they have the Hallmark card aisle. And my intuitive awareness has always been so spot on. I'm very, very empathic, very tapped into my feeling nature. I felt something was a little off because all of a sudden there's this brunette and she's about 50 yards away coming from, in the Walmart stores, they have the vitamin section over there. They have like the plants and then the garden section. She's coming towards me. I'm coming from the main entrance. So she's coming here. I'm coming here. I stop. I sensed her right here. Something's not right. I feel it in my soul. She doesn't look like she belongs there. She's got a black coat on. She's about 6 foot, 2 inches tall, slender, long, dark hair, very attractive, you can see, but she's got this persona that is larger than life. And I'm in Lone Rock, Wisconsin. This is not the place where you see that. And she's got dark shades on in the middle of the day inside the store. So I cut down the aisle, and then I'm kind of curious because I want to see what's happening. So here I am, cut down the aisle. She's walking down. She stops at the aisle, turns towards me. I decide to turn and walk back, and we cross each other's path. She stops right here, pulls her glasses down. Her whole face loses its composure, and scales begin to come out, and her eyes come bulging out, and she looks straight at me. And then she puts her form as a human back on and puts her glasses back on and walks. And I stopped. And, it's like that moment where you want to freeze because you're kind of in shock, but I'm not really in shock. But I walk right out of the store and I'm gone, and I'm completely gone. And so in that same 2-year period, I also had the UFO appear, and I was at my house on Blau Road, right on top of the hill.
Mansion.
Yes, 8,500 square foot mansion on top of the hill. Got an airstrip, private airstrip right out in the front there, and it's a large field. Well, this is during the week. I think it's a Monday night. It's probably about 8:50 p.m. I remember that for some reason. Sometime I have these massive windows, and I'm just sitting in the room like I normally do, just working on the computer, but these massive windows are picking up this big glare of light. So I'm seeing it. So I walk up and I'm like, and it's like right there. It's this massive, just like you would see in the movie, but it's real. I mean, the lights are going like this, and they're like circulating around this big giant, it's, a big giant dome. And it's seriously, it's got to be like a mile in radius. I mean, it's huge. It took covered the whole field and then some. And it's hovering pretty low. My hill is probably about, I don't know, maybe 100 feet, not even, probably 60 feet up. This thing is only a couple hundred maybe yards above ground. So its size, it looks like it's just hovering right above the ground.
Did you hear a sound?
No, I just saw it right there. And then I look online to see if anybody else is seeing it. And there's another girl in Spring Green that's seeing it. And she's typing about it. I'm not the only one seeing this. And so needless to say, I'm in this huge house by myself. I'm a little concerned. I don't know why it's right outside the house. Okay. I run and I grab my shotgun out of the closet. I run to my truck. I get in my truck and I fly. I got to go all the way down the hill, and I got to go past this thing to get out of here. So the house was one thing, but as I'm at the road, driving past this, I'm like, I swear to you, do not levitate my truck up. I'm like, I got to get out of here. And so I'm gone, and that's it, and then the next day there's the Black Hawk helicopter begins flying. Okay. They're flying a Black Hawk helicopter. Okay. So here's the field right here. My house is right here. So the Black Hawk is hovering. It would come down and hover above the ground, and it would take this flight pattern. It would come right over my house, and it would circle this way, come all the way around, and it would come and it would come in and it would hover and it kept running this flight pattern. And they did this for about 2 to 3 weeks, every single day, hovering this flight pattern. So I called in to the sheriff's office, shortly after this happened. I'm like, do you know what's going on here? I'm like, there is a Black Hawk helicopter. It's flying over my house every day. It is so loud. And not to mention what I saw in the sky the other day. I don't even know how to explain this to you, but is there something going on? And the guy says to me, he goes, we have no knowledge of any Black Hawk helicopter in the area. And I say, okay, I see what's going on here. This is just weird, right? Well, when I talked to Kimberly, and she's part of the Super Soldier program, they were there because of me. Okay, the shapeshifter and the ship, that was Darkfleet. Now, I had been involved in this incarnation with some people that were doing some channelings and some work with entities off world. And I had begun to have these paranormal experiences where one day I'd be off in my car and I would be at the gas station and I come to open my car and I have no keys to get in my car. Well, how did I get to the gas station? First of all, if I didn't have keys, right? Second of all, I can't find them anywhere. And so I have to call Sabrina to come get me. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. I'm tripping. This is really strange. So she comes to get me, and we're living, County Road C out in the country at the time. I'm just shaking my head. I'm like, this is just another one of these experiences. I'm walking to the house and I see my keys laying in the field. I catch a glimpse of this glare. So I walk over there and I find my keys laying in the field. The keys that I had to get to the gas station in the car. Who did that? And how did it get there? And so that still to me is a riddle that don't know. Just like I can't remember back when, went through that car windshield at age 2. However, what I started to do unconsciously that brought a lot of this back to my awareness is lucid dreaming, when you're asleep at night and you begin to recollect certain experiences that happen again and again and again and again and again. Have you ever had stuff like that where you've had the same memory? Well, usually that's part of you that is existing, and you can bring that into your awareness. Okay. So what I kept having this dream that I was this soldier, I was being chased, and I was always ahead of those who were chasing me. And there were times when I even died in that vision. And then I would just have the dream again, and I would do it again and again. And I started to recognize that there's something about that is part of me. And so when I talked to Kimberly, she's bringing me back through this regression period, helping me identify and remember things like I'd have to remember when I, in this body where I drowned when I was about age 8, I had a drowning experience, which was a death experience. And I'll explain that in a minute. But even that car accident, I could be regressed to remember that if I wanted to. But I was being regressed to remember some of these experiences. And when Kimberly said something about the chair and she talked about the light, my whole countenance changed. Like my face flushed and I went into like shock, like in this body right here. And she goes, I know you were there because I was there with you. And she was telling me these things, and all of the people that had come into my life in this body, there were certain people that are known for this type of stuff. People that have been through MK Ultra. Yes, they've been in my life. People that are, CIA, Navy SEAL. Yes, they've been in my life. Okay. And I'm asking you, what's going on with this? And Kimberly's like, they are part of your super soldier program. You are with them. She told me who my handler was, person who's been in my life. And then I had a flash of revelation. Then it all made sense. When I met this person, he said, you're like a son to me. And I met him in this body And I felt this connection, like we'd known each other forever.
Mm-hmm.
And why did he say you're like a son to me? And then I'm starting to remember drips and pieces of all of this stuff come back into, into my awareness. And I don't know if I want to go through all the remembering of that, but, she's telling me she's telling me who my alters are. And then I can see why, even growing up in this body, a lot of things were so easy to me. Like when I played hockey for a long time, age 3 to age 20. I never lost a fight in a single hockey game ever. And now, how is that? By the way, I've got my little with me. How you doing?
Oh, she's adorable. Hello.
Yeah. How do you think, Fiona? Do you want to go watch? You can go watch TV if you want. Okay. I'm just going to finish up. Okay.
No, I'd rather do this.
Okay, go do that. All right. She doesn't have school on Wednesday, so she's mine today. So so
yours always.
Yeah. So I remembered that. So every time I would ever go into a fight, I literally would have this experience that any trained fighter would know, or anybody who's gone into flow state. So I practice flow state now, and I can, they would call it channeling and flowing. I can just do that at will now mentally. But my only experiences of flow state ever happened in the beginning was through sports, predominantly in a situation where there was like physical fighting or, some sort of interaction like that with hockey. And I'd go into this flow state. And every time I'd get into a fight, I would go into this altered state, and I would absolutely just go ballistic. And it was like something came through me that was just insanely powerful and insanely just fast and efficient. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of weird because people who knew me, even, going through high school, I'd get in fights, and it was like, you didn't want to fight me because I was pretty vicious, and I would not lose. And mm-hmm. These are back in the days when people weren't offended by name calling. People actually went outside and did fought, Mm-hmm. So anyway, what I know is that I was tapping into this altar that was part of this program and part of Dark Fleet. And so it's the same light spread out, but you're bringing it back into your now awareness, into this vessel. See, you're just like somebody can channel, like if you listen to like Abraham Hicks or Bashar, and they're just like, and all of a sudden something comes through. Mm-hmm. You're doing that actually anyway. And some people have these altars that come through, and they can consciously use them. And that's really just you from the other dimension. That's you're living currently in those multiple realities. And
I hadn't thought about it quite like that.
Yeah. And I'm certain that if you're asking the question and if you're going there, you're probably already doing this. Mm-hmm. And it's figuring out, here's the real riddle though. The real riddle is that you never meet anybody for the first time. Mm-hmm. You see? Mm-hmm. So piecing together who some of the people are in your reality now to the altars is going to be interesting. Mm. And if you can do that, see, I had an example, and I had this, in one of my sleeping / half awake episodes one time. And this is like those are the times when literally I heard God speak. I saw the Bible open. This is when a Romans 8:10 came, and I knew that was my life scripture. Never read the Bible before, but I heard the audible voice, and the Bible opened up, and I saw Romans 8:10. I literally saw the Bible passage. The next, morning when I was fully awake, I got to go look at this Bible. Like, what is that scripture? I'm so curious. That's been my life scripture ever since. And that was like a prophetic vision. And This is when you're in that lowered brain state, you can recall that's your God consciousness, you see? And you're taking the light back to the source. And as you do that, you can converge with some of these other aspects of you as well. And
Mhm.
I had this one episode, and I knew this because there was this certain politician, and everybody loves this politician, some people did. And I saw him for who he really was, and I saw who he was associated with. And I said, that is not somebody I'm endorsing, and I've never been for that person. And that's the thing, is that so many people were, I think they were duped into it, but I saw it plain as day. I actually went in the altar and stood before the man and met the man face to face and knew everything about the man. Like, I knew everything about him.
Mhm.
And so when you have experiences like that, another one, case in point, this was in 2007. Now, at the time, I'm having another experience, and there's this girl, and I'm sitting in like this cafeteria, and we're sitting at a table together, and she tells me, I'm going to come and see you. And she's talking to me. No, this isn't a dream, right? So-called dream.
Mhm.
Well, then she shows up in the physical 2 days later, and I know it's her. And then we end up meeting, and that's the same person. You see that? I never met her before in
Mhm.
my life, but see, that's the thing, is I did meet her, you see?
Yeah.
And so if you can meet somebody in the dream and then simultaneously meet them in this dream, because you're still dreaming here, what's the difference between one dream and the other? It's just where your focus is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's right. Where the focus is, and what feels real, inverted commas,
Yep,
which isn't real.
that's right. And even Bashar says, if you can train yourself to wake up while you're lucid dreaming, okay, you can get these glasses, these lucid dreaming goggles. I have some of these, and they like flicker when you're lucid to kind of get you back awake. You can actually bend, quote unquote, bend reality in this experience and make this lucid too, because it's all a dream. So you can create the same lucid dream state in the waking consciousness right here. And so that is the way that, this is what I did. I did that for a long time. And if you start doing that, you will tap into some of your altars, and you will be able to like shift and have some weird experiences where this dream will be just as pliable as the dream at night, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So is the intention for doing that is to just explore the facets of your expression?
I would say yes, because for me, it's always been to deconstruct what they have said is reality. I have never believed, hook, line, and sinker, the fairy tale that we were born of flesh, because the Bible says we're spirit and we can't be born of flesh. Otherwise, we're under the curse. God's children are spirit. The sons of men are cursed. They're mortals. They're never blessed. And see, they tell you in plain sight, you're at a wake. See, if you're at a wake, where are you? You're amongst the dead. Okay. So they tell you that you're awake. And then they say, hello, like hell, you're in hell. That's what hell is. It's reasoning. And they tell you all of these things in plain sight so nobody can see it, but they're dreaming. Adam is dreaming in sin. That's Genesis 2 in the garden, after you eat of the tree of good and evil. So when reasoning kicks in, see, you're in a high state of reasoning while you are awake. But if you could become more lucid, then you will tap into the etheric, the altars, the imagination, and it will all kind of blend from one dream to the other, where you'll fall awake and you'll awake, and it'll just be like, it's all a dream, and I can bend all of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's when it really gets exciting, because what can you do in a dream?
Anything.
Exactly. And if you could believe with the grain of a mustard seed, what could you do here?
Anything.
And so what's the secret to getting yourself to believe you can do anything? Destroy the reality.
Yeah. Use your imagination.
Exactly. destroy the fake reality that you think is the real reality. Deconstruct it one layer at a time. And you're doing it, unconsciously. So you're already doing that. That's why you're talking about it before we even begin this conversation. And consequently, that's how I began doing it. Was I spent more time being lucid. I started to prefer a different lifestyle. Like, for example, I sleep during the day and I also sleep at night. I sleep for 2 hours at night, 2 to 3 hours, and I sleep for like an hour during the day, maybe 2 hours. I don't do an 8-hour sleep. I stretch it out as long as I can while I'm consciously aware. And then I drift off at about 9 o'clock. I wake up at about 11, 12, something like that. And then I'm up again. And then I lay down and I kind of try to sleep again, but I don't really sleep. And then I get up and then I go to bed again in the afternoon for a little bit. But what's happening with that is when you begin to do that, you're actually shifting everything to a lucid state. And now I'm not suggesting to go do that if you can't handle that and cause yourself, stress that you don't want. But ultimately, that began happening to me by default because of what was going on in my life. I was getting over Lyme disease at the time, and I had all of these problems with like a lot of fatigue, and I had a lot of issues. And so naturally, I tried to stay awake as often as I could. And that was my whole mission, was I want to stay awake. I want to stay awake. And so every time I'd sleep, I'd wake back up. And what happened was I became lucid all the time. And then in that lucid state, all of a sudden I was going from zero to zero and bankrupt with Lyme disease to a couple of years later, I have this 7-figure business. I'm living in a mansion. I'm, interdimensionally operating, and things are so beyond what they say is reality that for me, it's all just one long dream.
Yeah. So because there is no death,
Yep.
With the Super Soldier program, it would appear that your locus of control is not necessarily yourself, because you have handlers.
There was more that went on in this reality that I'm even consciously aware of, just like I can't remember some of the things that happened in my youth. There was more that was there. And it's just a matter of, do I want to remember or not? And for me, I don't know. I don't know if that would serve me at this point. So
yeah, because that's exactly also what I'm thinking about in terms of I don't know what it is, what quality you would have to have in terms of the stability to be able to really explore your real multi-dimensionality, basically. In many ways, our current world, is a slave world. So it keeps us busy, distracted. So we don't necessarily sit into, what's possible, versus sort of like our indigenous peoples who would do lots of dreaming time, basically. So could truly explore, their multifaceted worlds, basically. So, so in terms of, people who are considered to have alters in the modern world are considered to be ill, in terms of mental illness and stuff like that. So it's just, working out, what each individual can personally, integrate, basically.
Well, a lot of what I teach, with the ABC break process, the safe touch, the self-entrainment technique, these are me integrating with what you would call the altars. All right. So there are the application of those techniques. The reason why they work is because this altar that I tap into is a strategist for Darkfleet, and leaving that organization, that's what I did. And that's why there was a lot of, fallout after that, because that's not really a positive thing. Okay. That's not really a good thing. Okay. That's not really on the light side of things. Right. So, but this is what I do now, is I bring that strategy to the table, you see, because I know how to win these battles, and it comes down to your skill sets on a daily basis. And you practice and you practice and you train yourself. And ultimately, most people haven't even got a clue who they really are. If you knew who you were and how powerful you are, that's the most terrifying thing for those so-called slave owners, the rulers that have held captive all of their subservience. If their subservience knew who they were, this couldn't last very long.
Yes, which helps me to sort of, understand, given your alters, your discipline, basically. Because, and your physiology, how physical you are and how important that is for you as well. Apart from the Lyme's disease, which I can understand is the perfect contrast to, want to regain that and to want to hold on to that as being an area that's, of high value to you. So, in many ways, it can really help us to understand and embrace more of our greater goodness, basically, to be able to express that if we can integrate some of that stuff.
Exactly. And if you get to the first principle idea, which is really what works for most people, is that you realize there's one mind, one consciousness. That's the light, right? And then just think of this kaleidoscope. And then if you really want to know how reality works, just think of like how the movie the tape reel, like the light comes through and it's like so fast. All the slides are actually static, like a snapshot, and then another snapshot and another snapshot. That's how reality truly works, is that we move frequency, we move energy, we move in and out of these dimensional realities. And while this room is how it is now, if I shift and I do like the self-entrainment technique, I can measure a certain reality frequency by joy, by peace, by love, how scaling up I'm doing of it. And although your human eyes may be deceived and think this is the same room, it is not the same room. And so then you can train yourself to notice the slight differences as you shift. And that's when you can really grab a hold of the idea that reality is bendable. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If I can find the slightest difference in a shift, then I've already proven it's not the same. And then I've already deconstructed the fact that we live in a linear timeline progression, can I?
Yeah.
Because if it's not the same, then it's not the same. That means all bets are off. That means I've been lied to.
Yeah.
Now another example is age 20. At the time, I was driving to Rockford, Illinois from Cottage Grove, Wisconsin, coming down this one lane, one lane each side, and they're grading the side of the road. So there's a lot of dust. Okay. The road's becoming less and less visible. So I'm going like 70. I'm starting to slow down because it's getting cloudier. The truck stopped in the middle of the highway. So I'm coming up 50 some miles an hour and I say, no, God, like I saw just, and I watched the whole car wrap around, the windshield bust out, everything just crushed like a tin can around me. I had nothing but an airbag little scuff on my forehead. Everybody was marveling when the ambulance came. They're like, how did you get out of this tin can and nothing happened to you? I literally watched reality stop. And I watched, like you see in the movies, where it was like the Matrix where the bullets slow down. It looked exactly like that. And nothing could touch me in that moment. It was like it wasn't even real. I just watched it kind of do its thing. And then it just stopped. And then it just turned back on. And then all of a sudden, I looked around. I'm like, I'm still here. And I just got out. And then they were like, get back away. And, you know, we don't know if you're in shock. Like, we got to check you out. So they had to take me into the hospital. And I was totally fine. But you see, reality is not what you see, smell, hear, taste, and touch. And that's even what Mary Baker Eddy discovered. She said, wholly separate from this material dream of the five senses is the life divine.
Mm-hmm.
And so the whole secret here, the real value is not in really like getting to know more about, you know, your altars and this and that, but it's about knowing that reality is not what you think, and then destroying every facet of those programs. See, you don't get to the enlightenment by trying to add on to yourself. You're already complete. You get there by destroying all of the corruption that is standing in the way.
Yeah.
And as you become aware of your true self, you recognize that, yeah, this is not the only show in town. This is not all that I'm doing right now. You see what I'm saying? You know, look at some of the yogis, how they can go into a meditative state and they can send their consciousness out and communicate with people and draw them to them. You know, it's Stephen Harefield tells a story. He's the American monk that he was, you know, finishing a certain job. He's making $250,000 a year. He's having a good life. And all of a sudden these people are coming to him and they're telling him, you have to come to us. And so he just says, I'm just going to go. He gets on a plane. I think he heads out to India or whatever. And he meets the people and they're like, yes, we've been calling you. And he's in tears and he's crying but you see, they were coming to him, you see?
Oh, yeah.
And
so
this
he had some sort of awareness.
That's right. And this is a reality that you can reach out. You're not limited to this vessel. You're always actually outside of this vessel. That's what you have to get a hold of, is that your life has never been contained in a physical vessel. That's what Mary Baker Eddy discovered. That's how she was able to witness healing, is because she never beheld anything mortal. She turned away from that appearance and said, that's not even a reality. God's child is spiritual. Infinite.
Yes. Yeah.
And
having this.
Yes.
Sorry.
The sum total and the parts are equal.
Yeah.
So how could you be an equal to the light and yet be so limited in such a small, finite capacity if it weren't for ignorance of who you are? You see? So all I propose is just certain things to do just to get that glimpse for yourself.
Yeah, that certainly sounds, you know, any sort of wisdom that you can sort of share that is helpful, you know, for people to step into, you know, their whole selves.
Yep. Well, the first thing you have to do is you really need to get the gnosis, okay, which is the knowledge. Okay, you need to have you need to intellectually grab a few ideas. Now, the best place I think you can get these ideas is like the Nag Hammadi library, the Gospel of Truth, Gospel of Philip, Gospel of Judas. You know, some of these forbidden gospels that they decided that you shouldn't know about. And as you begin to contemplate those, you'll start to really integrate that wisdom at your own capacity, at your own undoing of your old self. When wisdom comes in, ignorance leaves. That's the key. And we're trying to get ignorance to leave. We're not trying to become greater than we are. We're just getting rid of ignorance.
Yeah, it's sort of giving the imagination, you know, new tools, basically. It's really sort of supporting the imagination have greater tools, isn't it, in terms of the possibilities?
That's right.
And, you know, rather than being in that box.
Exactly.
You talk about. Yeah.
Yes, because the imagination is the real. and what you call form is actually empty. It's a dead carcass.
Mm.
And the laws of, the work of Walter Russell, A New Concept of the Universe, is a great book to read, or just listen to it on Audible, because he can explain to you how the whole universe works according to the electromagnetic theory, bioelectricity, physics, and he can do it in a simplified way where you can understand how this dielectric goes out, and it's all just, it's just nothing. And he shows you how it's always seeking rest. It's always seeking rest. It's always trying to come back into a place of rest. Well, look at the garden. Look at the Genesis 1. What happened is you were at rest with the Father in the garden, but yet you took thought for your life by judging good and evil. And what is that? That's agitation. So you created agitation out of rest, and therefore you fall asleep in a material dream. And in that material dream, that is fear, confusion, lack of trust, and double-mindedness and division. And that's what the gospel of truth tells you. It says, don't take the outer seriously because she worked on her fashion form, and yet she was ignorant of the truth. Mm-hmm. So if you start to put these pieces together and you start to look at it from different angles, and at the same time, start to play around and make yourself lucid. Set your alarm clock at like 3 a.m. And when you get up at 3 a.m., set the snooze button on repeat, and don't go fully back asleep. If you can do it, if you can do this, and it's not going to throw your whole life out of whack, try to stay in that lucid state and try to consciously dream from that lucid state, and you will start to merge into this state and become lucid as well. It'll bleed through, is what I'm telling you.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you say that, because I often, if we need to get up earlier than we usually do, we can wake up regularly just to check the time. And so, that's what I found that I have done, is that I've, regularly woken up when normally I wouldn't. I would sleep pretty much through the whole night without, waking up, wanting to check the time, make sure I haven't slept through the alarm, that type of thing.
Yep.
So, that makes a lot of sense to you, because most of the time when I'm waking up, I'm in a dream.
That's right. Yeah. And you're in a dream right now. And that's the thing, is that when you get what they say, in the, I think it's the Gospel of Philip, it says that he who discovers the truth knows that the world is not worthy of himself. Okay. The world isn't there. Other religions just say it straight out, that what you think is outside is nothing. It doesn't exist. So if I told you that everything that you think exists around you is actually not there, you'd think I was insane. But if I said that everything you saw in that dream last night while you were sleeping wasn't there, it was just a dream, you'd think I was sane.
Yeah.
But you see, that's the fallacy of human intelligence, is it's not intelligent. Because you're dreaming now, so it's the same both ways. Because the imagination is all and everything else is nothing.
Yeah. And I can certainly see how some of the indigenous cultures had a much more true perception of reality.
Yes. So there's another thing you can do too, is watch. There's a channel that has all these people that have had near-death experiences. I don't know what it's called, but I've watched like 10 people with their near-death experiences, and they all have the same thing. Is they realize that their reality is just not it. And they're still alive, they're still conscious, they're still themselves, and they're able to, be them, but they realize the reality is not real. It's not what they thought it was. And the more you can get these pieces and pull them together and really just chew on these pieces and then put them into application through certain techniques, like what I teach is the ABC break process first. That's the first one I used, so I was kind of lucid already, but as I began to use the ABC break process, I began to demonstrate. I began to have things start to show up, and I was like, this is incredible. this is actually doing stuff for me. And you see, I started to get victory after victory. And then I followed the fastest path to my joy, regardless of the fallout, because I realized if it's all a dream anyway, then why am I taking it so seriously?
Yeah.
And then that joy began to bring me into alignment, and it began to reflect out of my heart new experiences. And so I began to pop the bubble of the dream. I began to just pierce right through it.
So with the intention, like if one did decide to set the alarm so that you could, create more opportunities basically to get into that lucid dreaming.
Yep.
And, I guess part of that is trusting that you are safe, within that basically.
Yes.
Because I think you've got to have a certain amount of feeling of safety, and that you're protected basically. I think it's
Yes.
pretty crucial to that as well.
And that's why I recommend a lot of the reading of the esoteric wisdom from the Nag Hammadi, because if you get the real knowledge in here, you'll have something to hold on to know that you're safe.
Yeah.
Because where are you going to hold on to it? You have to hold on to it mentally.
Yeah.
Yep.
I definitely see that. But in terms of is that a space where you can ask for teachers to come through for you?
You
or
can
not?
You can, and you can actually communicate with anybody you want.
Yeah.
Even Napoleon Hill talked about this same thing when he created a mental mastermind group in Think and Grow Rich. And he would, bring in people that he wanted to sit at the table with him,
Yeah.
Well, the thing is once you recognize that you're not physical and that you're not bound to the physical, then you recognize, well, neither is anything or anybody else, because the only thing that is real is not physical anyway.
Yeah.
Physicality is frozen thoughts in space and time. And so then you reverse the law, bring it back into thought, and you begin to bring it back into spirit. And now you're at the first principle idea with divine mind governing you. And so out of divine mind, now you can add in people knowing that they are governed by divine mind, not by carnality.
Yes, that's a good principle in which to ground yourself.
Yes.
When doing this work. Yes, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is a way you can also help set people free that you see in your outer that are like, sick or hurting, is you recognize that there can't be one life, one principle of infinite harmony and, well-being. And at the same time, in the same space, some mortal that is sick, that's suffering and struggling. And so what you do is you remove the false. So there is no good or well Judy. There is no Judy with this illness. There is no, there is no other mind. There's only one power, one presence, one life. And so I've removed you wholly out of the picture, and I see only and I behold only the infinite perfection of the light of the Christ consciousness. See? And then I can add you back in now, knowing that you're nothing but an instrument for that consciousness. And I have just set you free by doing that.
Yeah. Yes, and I guess a way that you can support yourself doing that for yourself is by going into the lucid dreaming, because it's easier, I guess, to believe
100%
what you've just
100%.
Yeah, that's exactly my point. Yeah. So if you want to play with this, but you are stuck in the 0.1% matter that exists and not the 99% energy, then that could be a way to trick yourself, I suppose.
That's right. And I've always taught in every seminar, brainwave state management, like first thing is alpha brainwave states.
Yeah.
And that's, you can instantly fire alpha off if you just close your eyes and then just look up like you're looking through the top of your forehead And then in that looking up like that, you can relax now. You're firing off some alpha brain waves. But if you continue to breathe, and Mark Divine with SEAL Fit teaches this box breath, and it's all through your nose, in 5 seconds, hold 5 seconds, out 5 seconds, hold 5 seconds, or 3 to 5 seconds, whatever's comfortable for you. Just create a box and keep doing that through the nose. Within a 1 to 3 minute period, you'll start dropping into alpha brain waves. And the key is brainwave management. So when I'm doing healing work, or when I'm doing any type of effective consciousness, I'm trying to get from alpha to theta, and even hovering right in theta the whole time. And theta is the dream state, where when you set that alarm and you woke up and you're like, whoa, am I awake or still sleeping? Like, that's the perfect place. Because you can change a dream. So the key is to get yourself to think it's all a dream, because it is. And the brainwave being in the right state will treat this dream the same way it treats the other dream. Because the lying, doubting Thomas left brain, the reasoning mind, is not standing at the door doubting you the whole time anymore.
Yeah.
Yes. And so brainwave state management is really, really important. Even the work of PJ Doon, she talks about the God mind. It's the right brain, being right-minded. You see, where does that lead you to? It leads you to the imagination, to the dreamer that dreams within. And that is your innocence. That's your blamelessness. That's your childlike innocence.
Yeah.
And so you just keep practicing these things. And as you gain more truth, take in those Nag Hammadi Gospels, take in Emma Curtis Hopkins' High Mysticism. It's just genius work. The work of, oh God, I gave you his name the other day. I forgot his name. What was the guy's name? Told you to read his book. You said I already have it.
Joel.
Yeah, Joel. So Goldsmith.
Yeah.
So take in his work. Take in Mary Baker Eddy's work. Begin to look at people who have pierced through the veil and they know it's an illusion.
Yeah.
And then get yourself optimized in those brain states so that you learn how to live in those lower theta brain, alpha brain, and practice getting there again and again. You can learn how to do theta. I'll take you into theta right now, and I'll give you a demonstration. Then you can just repeat this again and again. The more you practice it, the quicker it becomes. So put yourself into a ball of white light in your heart center. And in this ball of white light, take yourself down through your feet, down into the earth, gather up the core grounding energies of the earth. Bring yourself back up through your feet in this ball of white light. Take yourself back up and out of the top of your head. And in this ball of white light, go up and out of the room and go into the clouds and beyond, into the dark and the light, and the dark and the light, and go through a thick jelly-like substance called the laws, and go up and around and up into a nice iridescent 7th dimension. And now we're in theta. Okay, so now cleanse yourself off with a golden light. Bring yourself back down into your head, down into your feet, down into the earth. Gather up the core grounding energies. Bring yourself back up to your feet and up into your body, and open your eyes. Okay, so by practicing that technique, and now the only thing you'll do differently is that when you go into theta, stay there a little longer. Just get used to being in that state. And if you practice, you'll be able to do it in like a 2-second, split second. Boom, I'm in theta now. And as you adjust your sleep schedule, you kind of always want to be a little bit sleepy. Now, it's not a bad thing, because now you're halfway there. And now if I drop into theta from there, I'm in the perfect brainwave state to bend this whole reality construct.
I have a question. You said when you're in the laws, is it laws?
Yeah, laws, LAWS. That would be like your laws that we're trying to disrupt here. Like all of these rules that govern this whole construct of what we call our reality. We're trying to bend all that. You see, we're reducing our exposure to it.
Yeah. Okay. Because I have, you know, because I've been to a few of your courses, I hadn't, you know, I was always a question mark as to what that word was and what it meant. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's what it means. It means that these are the laws that are keeping you into this idea that you exist born of flesh. You were never born of flesh. You never left heaven. And heaven is a consciousness state. And as you return to that consciousness state, then you've accessed the kingdom and all these things are brought back onto you. And that's the path of the mystical ascension. Jesus taught that path, and he beheld only the Christ parent mind. God and I are one. You see?
Yeah.
And that's the mystical path. And that's the path that I teach because it's the path I know.
Yeah.
And that's how I got out of Lyme disease and all sorts of other things that seemingly, you know, to the carnal sense, there's no escape. But then again, who's carnal? You see?
Yeah.
You know, you don't try to solve or heal a problem. You recognize that there is none. And then you become, yes.
Yeah, I know, you know, having, you know, immersed myself quite a lot in Joel's work recently, you know, that's what comes home all the time.
Yep.
And it is very much repeating that and feeling it, you know, as a truth, you know, to undo the hypnotism that's happening, basically.
Yes. So remember I told you the story about the car, you know, how it just kind of cracked around me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the drowning experience was very similar. I walked out on the lake and I fell right through the ice, and I saw myself go under the ice. And, you know, it's probably one of the most terrifying experiences you could ever have, because as you're swept under the ice, you're not coming back. Now, the next thing I remember is there was a glitch in my mind, and all of a sudden my timeline picked back up, and for some reason my head bobbed back up, and there was a guy running with a boy, and he threw me a rope, and I grabbed the rope and I scurried on out of the water, and I ran like there was no tomorrow, full speed, all the way back to my grandma's house, ran in the house, called her. She said, get in the hot shower right now. And I did. And we never talked about it again after that moment. But here, logically speaking, do you really think there was a guy walking with his kid outside with a rope long enough to throw me on the ice to pull me out? Just randomly happened to have a rope that day? I mean, you have less than probably 30 seconds if somebody falls under the ice to actually try to get them out before they're frozen and they're done. Because that was it. I went under the ice. I consciously remember that. And then it was like I blacked out. And then the next thing I know, I was coming back to consciousness, grabbing this rope and running home. So that's what you call a death experience, yet you're sent back. And the continuity is here's a story for your mind to assimilate. Here's how you saved yourself. You see?
Yeah. So in many ways, well, I don't know who created the rope, basically.
It's a dream, remember?
Yeah.
It's no different in this dream than it is at night. And that is another example of that. You know?
Yeah.
When you start to realize that this is a dream, that's the whole game. That's what every one of these people knew. That's what Mary Baker Eddy knew. That's what Phineas Parkhurst Quimby knew. That's what Goldsmith knew. Every single one of them had to have an experiential moment when they pierced through the dream and recognized that it was just a dream. And the best way to get there is to know the truth, take it in, and get yourself into the lowered brainwave states so that you become lucid. And then as you become kind of, you know, I could fall asleep right now, but I'm awake. And you start to have these thoughts and they start to manifest instantly in this dream. You're like, well, this is pretty much the same dream as the one at night because I've taken away its power. And that's one thing that Goldsmith talks about, is take that power away from all those creatures and forms, doesn't he?
Mm.
Well, take the power away from the creatures and forms, and if you give it to the imagination where it belongs, well, then all power is in imagination now. So therefore, it's all a dream.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. Very interesting, because I know my tendency is to want to wake up quick. You know, it's not, you know, it's like, you know, there's this thing that, you know, wants to sabotage that, basically, you know, that doesn't give, you know, I'm not giving myself permission to float.
Yes.
In that, to float with it. It's just I've got to snap myself back into this reality, basically. So that's really something that I'm interested in playing with, to give
That's
myself
great.
permission. Yeah.
And here's another tool that I think is probably one of the most powerful ones. The I Am Discourses of Saint Germain is one of the best works ever written, because the I Am is the name of God. And I know personally, because I heard that voice when I was on the hill at age 12, that was the audible voice of God. And I heard that I Am is the name of God. It really is. And if you listen to that while you sleep every night, you know, there's a Giving Voice to the Wisdom of Ages, that narrator, I like his voice. He reads a lot of these books. I played that every night during lockdown for about 8 months straight as I slept. I had 2 experiences where I manifested, just like the book says, out of thin air. Like I would wake up almost every night at the exact moment that I needed to hear the exact message. And while you're in that state of you're still sleeping, but you're hearing it, you become it, because you merge with that thought instantly. And so I had quantum growth by doing that every single night. That was so powerful. That was one of the best things that I ever did in my entire life, was put that on repeat every single night during my sleep. And I played it just loud enough so that as I woke up, it like literally took over my whole being. I would hear just the right part, and I'd be like, yes, you know, and it was amazing. It's like it was the blessing. Yeah.
While you are in a very, you know, influential state as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I did that every night for, you know, months and months, and I just experienced massive growth during that time. And I probably bet you could do that with any teaching that's worth its weight. And that's just one of my favorite, because it's all about the I Am, and it kind of takes you to the first principle. So that's why I think it's so powerful, because the I Am is the first principle. There's only one man. I Am is that man, manifest creation. You exist in that creation that is the living imagination. So as you begin to root yourself to that, it becomes you. And that removes all kinds of ignorance out of and you literally will come into the power where you will change your outer environment around you. Like literally you could transform everything around you with that consciousness.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're not attached to it.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's all I wanted to share today. I mean, what do you think? Was that, I mean, just, I wanted to give little bits that actually you can use, you know?
Yeah. Well, you know, it's not, exactly. That is precisely right, because it's not just stuff to feed, you know, your mortal mind. It is, you know, just intellectual stuff to know, but it's what is actually going to be useful to engage the imagination so that I can be whole.
Yes.
Or I know that I am already whole, but it's just like, experiences that can support that.
That's right. That experiential knowledge, once you gain it, it can never be taken away from you.
Yeah.
And see, that's the birth of the new self.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the,
and I've come away with, I just need, well, there's lots of takeaways, but the one thing I there is one thing, and that is allowing myself to be in that slumber, to relish that, to enjoy that, and to really give myself more opportunities to be in that, rather than the automatic thing, which is, wake up, ding. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Well, if you can't add on anything to God, and you can't take away anything from God, because God is all and the full blessing is already poured out, you're already in the fullness of the spirit, which is the imagination. It's complete. And remember, the sum and the parts, the total are equal. It's an equal. And so what are we really trying to do here? We're trying to remember who we are.
Yeah. Well, we think we're trying to get somewhere.
You're there. That's the whole point.
I know. We think we're trying to get somewhere, but we're already there.
I've made some of my most tremendous gains while I was laying in bed half asleep.
Yeah.
And they come into my life in what you call so-called physical. It's not physical. It comes into this dream because I brought it into this dream.
Mm-hmm.
And you see, so you have, like you said, you'll experience it, and then you'll become, like, this is cool. I want to do more of this.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll be able to walk through this dream, and you'll say, you know what? This is not as terrifying as it first looked, because it's no different than the other dream. I think I'm going to shift things around, and I'm going to change this place. And you start to see things as they really are, and then they start changing. The form starts changing. That's what I did around this whole city. Remember, I told you when the lockdowns came, and I said, that's not going to happen. So I learned in PTT that was from being lucid.
Yeah.
I knew that I could say God is all, God is love, and that I could work this metronome. What is it doing? I'm actually breaking the connection to that being awake, and I'm staying in the now, where I can plant the truth. And I would know that God is all, God is love, and God's man is never deceived. And I kept holding that thought. And as I walked into the venue, knowing the truth, that spread, because all emanations recognized its wisdom when wisdom shows up. So I drew forth wisdom out of that dead carcass world out there, and all of a sudden the form changed. And I changed the whole area by doing that. And that's how powerful you are. And that's every single conscious living being, because we're all the I am presence made manifest.
Yeah.
And so that's the secret. That's the way out. The way out is wisdom.
Yeah.
Yep.
I definitely feel the truth of that.
Yeah. And that's how, Daniel could be thrown in the lion's den, and all these, you hear these stories that are impossible, right? But he knew that God was all, and that divine love was the only truth. And that was the surety and the safety, because he wasn't mesmerized by the dream.
Yes, or, I guess, it's that fear of death as well, when you know that there is no thing.
That's right. And yet Paul said, die to the world daily.
Yeah. He's talking about a particular world.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's leave it at that. That was good.
Okay.
Was that?
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Matthew.
I didn't want to talk about me the whole time. I wanted to talk about what I've learned, so that, if it's of any value, that, it'll be useful for you. So.
Yeah. No, perfect. Absolutely perfect. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for doing this. I know it's early for you. So,
No, my pleasure.
okay.
Have a
I'll
great
talk
day.
to you soon then.